On this episode of the John 1911 podcast, Brugger and Tomei, US-made RPGs, 320's blowing up, and keeping your own house in order. Okay, good evening, everybody. This is Kraken and Marky, and this is episode 297 of the John 1911 podcast. For those of you that may be wondering, no, you are not having a fever dream. We are publishing a second podcast a day after publishing the first podcast. So we've had a number of people that tell me that they like the super long pods. And so I'm a little insecure about that because I just, I don't realize how long we go. So I'm thinking, well, sometimes if they like the long pods, we can do back-to-back short pods. So got Kraken back on the line. And Kraken, how's life treating you?
I can't complain. The weather's finally turned off nice and got the cover off the boat today and started to unwinterize it and ready to get that thing on the water here pretty quick.
You have a boat. Oh, I didn't know that.
Oh, yeah.
Big boat or little boat?
Oh,
Does
it's an 18-foot deep V. I use it for tournament catfishing.
Oh, you know what? That's right. Yeah, because it's okay. Yeah. I didn't know if it was because you know what? I think about there's a lake. Well, there's Lake Erie. I mean, I'm in Ohio, but there is Lake Cumberland in Kentucky-Tennessee border, and a lot of
Mm-hmm.
people from around here go to houseboats. So when I think of boats, I think of, I don't know, like trailers on the water, like these big giant things all these people get drunk on, and like three stories tall, and they're mooning each other. But you got like you got like basically a civilian version of a Bass Pro frigate with depth charges and sonar looking to kill every fish between your house and New Orleans.
Well, I'm still trying to figure out how to get quad 50s mounted up front, but
Yeah.
we'll save that for another day. There's a few too many tax stamps involved with that.
Yeah, but hey, the thing is, people don't realize in America it is all legal if you pay the price. I mean, you can get it's like yeah, you can get licenses for anything in America. Anything the government has, somebody had to make it. That means a company had to make it, and the company has to have the license to make it.
Just
You know,
just
can't
depends on how many hoops you want to jump through and
yeah,
how many stamps you
cannons,
want to buy.
torpedoes. High explosives. I mean, cruise missiles. Anything. The government doesn't make anything. Not in
No.
America. Government doesn't make anything. Some civilian is making that. And so somebody's got it. Yeah, that's where it all comes from. Well, we did a thing on it. There's a company in Texas that makes a it's an RPG 7, and it's American made. It's even got pick rails on it, and so it's like a super high quality RPG. And they make the tube, the launcher, and they make the rockets. But it is compatible with obviously all the Warsaw Pact or as the U.S. government call it, non-standard weapons,
Uh-huh.
because after the fall of the Berlin or fall of the Soviet Union, we have more and more allies that have quote non-standard weapons, and then we have this thing where we're not allowed technically to get well, we weren't allowed to get weapons from China because of Tiananmen Square. And then, after the first blip with Ukraine, Barack Obama is limited. We're not allowed to get weapons from Russia or Russian sources, and so the U.S. government needed the ability. Like if we had to provide, like this isn't the example, but Poland has a lot of Russian weapons. They fly MiGs. Well, they would have RPGs. Well, they did. And so if we wanted to supply them, with weapons, or if we wanted to supply, our buddies in the Middle East, whoever, we don't want to give them Chinese RPGs. We'll give them American-made RPGs. So yeah, I mean, if you go into it, people are surprised. There's a company not far from where the armory is. We have a relationship with this company. They're in southern Indiana, and they specialize in Warsaw non-standard weapons, basically Warsaw weapons. And it's not just like, like AK-47s and 74s, but like
Hmm.
RPKs, PKMs, Dishkas, like they source it and they work on it and they provide it for the army and for foreign military, what they really call it, not foreign military. They have a term for it, but there's a company in Southern Indiana that's real big into that.
Hmm. I did not know that.
Yeah, comes in, comes out. Yeah, and they bid on it. Like you've ever seen the? I know listeners have seen the movie. I know I've never really seen the movie. Do you remember the? It's a movie that came. I don't. It's a movie that came out about the kids. They were based in Miami.
War Dogs.
Yeah, I don't remember what the movie was called, but I
Yeah,
mean,
War Dogs.
because we were looking at dealing with some stuff in northern Iraq, which at the time was called Kurdistan. But we like literally, I remember the first time this guy was like, no, 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 northern Iraq. It's this like Kurdistan. It's this and that. I'm like, what the fuck? Like, why do we want to do business there? So, you know, we kind of had to start dealing with some of these different entities and looking at things. And I remember the kids' names. It was Ephraim Deveroli.
F.
I don't know what their names
Yep.
were in the movie, but it's Ephraim Deveroli, David, is it Packhouse? F
Something like that.
F
Ephraim Deveroli and David something
I think
or I've seen the movie. It's but yeah, you're on the right track there. The right
did
movie.
they use their so they actually used their names, Ephraim, like it was they didn't change their names in the
Yes,
movie?
they yeah, they really did. And then even at the end of the movie, they did the little printed blip of what the aftermath of their arrest was,
Oh,
and
okay.
how it changed the arms the uh, the arms world going forward after that in the procurement system.
But I've seen clips of the movie where they talk about getting on a website for bidding on government work. That website has changed, but that's real. And I know
Hmm.
this company in Southern Indiana, that's basically how I mean, they have relationships too, but formally they submit bids through a system like that. And it was the same system that those kids, Ephraim Deveroli, and I swear it was David. What's Ephraim Deveroli, David? And there was another one too. And I tell you what, actually, funny story. So again, I haven't seen the movie, but I've seen clips. Um, and this is for the gun people. Most of the people listen to this podcast. So there's a character in the movie. Who's one of the real hunky actors that all the women like? He's in the movie.
Oh,
He's a big star.
uh,
Is it Brad Pitt? Is that him or was it no
Bradley Cooper.
Bradley Cooper? What name did he have in the movie?
I do not recall, but he played basically like one of the biggest arms dealers in the world.
He's a real guy,
Yeah.
and they did. I guarantee they didn't use his name because that guy is still alive. Or he was. I haven't checked in a year or so. He was, and he had kind of was living in like the Balkans at one point. That guy's name was Henri Tomei.
Okay.
That's his real name. So I don't know what name he used in the movie. The guy's name is Henri Tomei. And if you're like, okay, like like whatever name, if you are a gun person and if you ever have bought a B&T weapon, a B&T silencer, B&T stands for Bruger and Tomei. He was that was one of his initial startup companies, B&T. Henri Tomei was started one of that company and went on. Yeah, he exited that, but they kept the name.
Hmm.
Yeah, fun fact. Yeah, and I can't remember. He is if he's wanted. Like I know he can't be seriously wanted because eventually they'd scoop him up. But I think the last I checked, he was living somewhere in the Balkans. And
Hmm.
there was an arms warehouse that he was getting a lot of stuff from, and it's suspiciously blew up or burned down a couple years ago. And it was like, oh, they had an accident at one of these old Soviet arms depots. And it's like, oh yeah, that's I heard Henri's in town over there. I wonder if that's, somebody's fucking with somebody. So I'll have to I'll dig up links and put it on the show notes. So
Yeah, that'd be an interesting follow up.
yeah. Speaking of interesting follow-ups, how have you been dealing with commenters on being pissed off about broken 2011s on the Facebook page?
Oh, good Lord. I'll tell you what. The, I've had to leave some of the staccato pages on Facebook even before this happened. Uh, they're just a whole different breed of people. But every theory under the moon as to why this happened and how it couldn't happen, or how a $2,000 pistol should never ever malfunction. It's overpriced junk. You name it.
Two
It's
thousand
it's just
dollars in
been
a
a big
1911 game is not a lot of money. I'm like,
yeah.
uh,
Eh, the thing about the staccato pages is if you don't if you don't bow before the altar of staccato, specifically on those pages, they basically just accuse you of being, and I hate this term, but they accuse you of being a poor who's trying to convince everybody that your little Taurus is just as good, for $300. And a lot of these people don't realize that two or $3,000 in the gun world does not make you a big wheel. You got a nice pistol. It's not a Glock. It's pricier than a Glock. But when you drop 2,300 on a staccato P, you're not some kind of big wheel, high flying, super special guy.
no. Like I mean, go shop at Holland. Like our readers will notice that like I wear the Holland and Holland hat. I wore out the old one, put a new one on, the H&H Holland and Holland
Mm.
hat, and it's like, how did I end up with a Holland and Holland hat? Because I went to Holland and Holland one day, interfaced with them, and they had a baseball hat for $40, and that was the only thing in that store that I could afford. And I and I am not a poor. Okay, it's like what the? It was like, that's all Marky could get. It was like, so I'll take the hat. So it's like holy smoke. So
Yeah.
you've done a real good job. You really earned your keep. Hey, by the way, did your mug show up?
Yes, it
Is
did.
it broken?
Nope, it showed up perfectly well. The mailman did not bring it to the door today. I think he is working on the theory of plausible deniability.
I didn't write too many. I didn't put anything on it that was too bad. Like I just like it was. I said don't like the side of the box. It said don't kick the baby, and the other said was fragile. It must be Italian. Look, I didn't. I didn't. I didn't put something on it like tranny lube or something, tranny fluid, or I don't know. Sex.
Now we're saving that for the Bud Light
Yeah,
cans.
yeah. Oh well. I mean, I don't know. I mean, look, you and I have to you and I we communicate. We might have to have a conversation here because we about advertising and public image and the kind of things that we lead with. And I'm not much of like jumping onto the bandwagons, but I'm starting to maybe feel a little pressure to buy a case of Bud Light and get one of the SWAT guys to let us get one of their machine guns so we can shoot a case of Bud Light too, I guess. It's like I'd be like, is this what we're doing now? Like, you know,
It, well, it's they've always had the Facebook and TikTok challenges, like the whole Tide Pod and eating cinnamon. So we could call it, like the Kid Rock Bud Light challenge.
Well, like I mean, like I know there's the ice bucket challenge, which was for the what's it called? The like I was ALS or something, like Lou Gehrig's
Yeah,
disease or something.
something like
It's like,
that. Yeah.
it's like, you know, I I mean, look, who
But
doesn't want to shoot an MP5 at a at a bunch of pop cans essentially? I mean, it's like that's cool. I don't know.
Kid Rock beat us to that already,
I
though.
know, Kid. I mean,
We got to do something with Tannerite or something.
but Kid Rock, man, he seemed really pissed off, and I was just like, I mean, I'm like, I mean, a private company has the right to put this. The best line I heard, and I don't drink, and so I don't drink alcohol, so I'm a teetotaler, so I mean, I'm probably not the guy, but the best one I heard was somebody said the fake beer has got a fake girl on the can because it's Bud Light, and I guess that's not considered. I was like, wow, this is getting vicious. Um, it's just like, look, I mean, okay, like the company.
Yeah, liberals just seem to have lost their mind over this whole deal of boycotting Anheuser Busch products, and
They're
it's
getting they're
really big around here because Busch Light is like the state beer around here. So all the MAGA guys are, I'm never drinking Busch Light again. I'm never drinking Budweiser products again, and all the liberals are screaming, "Ooh, that's too. You're scared of a beer can," and then you get the whole tit for tat with the Uncle Ben's rice and the Aunt Jemima and all that stuff going on, and I don't care. I just don't. The whole hypocrisy of it going back and forth is what gets me. I don't really. If you like Bud Light, drink Bud Light. Who cares? Boycotting products doesn't work because you never get enough people to boycott anything to make a difference anyway. What's Budweiser worth? A couple $1 billion.
yeah, I don't
I mean, not
yeah,
drinking a 6 pack isn't going to
yeah, I
hurt
don't
them.
think Budweiser's even technically owned by an American company
No, it's
because
it's owned by a corporation called InBev.
in Germany or something or in Europe.
I believe it's
Yeah.
European, but there's like 25 different labels that you would have to boycott to be intellectually honest.
Yeah, I mean it's like I mean there's two schools of thought here. It's like, okay, Coors or is it Coors Light or whatever, or no, of course, Bud Light, sorry, Bud Light can, they want to put the tranny kid that looks like that's trying basically is trying to look like from Breakfast at Tiffany's actress, whatever Katharine
Yeah.
Hepburn. Because that's what I see when I see this. We're like, this person's like a Katharine Hepburn crossdresser. So they want to put that on their beer. It's like, fine. And then you know what? If people want to get upset, it's like, fine. It's like, I mean, at some point you got to say to yourself as a business person, why do we even want to even go there? Like, well, I mean, like, I don't know, I don't know, like, why, okay, for example, why would a gun company decide to say, I'm trying to think of a counter, like, I don't know, like a gun, like, I mean, I don't like a major gun company, like a major one, not like a small one, but, like Ruger or Smith and Wesson or Glock. Why would they want to come out and say something like, we're going to put Donald Trump on our guns? And, like, there's a lot of, like, I feel like sometimes a lot of businesses, they feel like, I think there's people, what it is, you're in the beer business, okay? And you're going to sell beer and do whatever and that thing. But then there's these executives and they work in the C suites and, they've got their personal political opinions and they want to play too. And it's like, I got an idea. Let's do this. And it's just like, you know, I don't think it's the smartest brand move. And I think if people want to boycott, I'll tell you what, I don't know if I agree with you that this is not going to have an effect. And here's why. Because I saw something with this that I haven't seen anywhere else, anything else with this, was one of the media outlets reported it was like they actually were naming like the is it chief CMO, the chief marketing officer, and they were naming like it was like man and a woman at this company
Hmm.
at I guess Bud Light at Budweiser. Or I don't know how it works. Like I don't know if there's like one. I don't know if there's like people for like the whole company and all the brands, or each individual brand has its own marketing team. I would assume each individual brand has its marketing team. That's how P&G does it. But you know, like they started like who did this? Like who would be the like who would come up with the idea? Then somebody had to sign off on it. And the fact that they put their name in the paper, like with their LinkedIn and their like who these people are, it was like, huh. Like I mean, if I was a stockholder in these companies, like I'm on the board or like I'm a major stockholder. I mean, I assume these beer companies are in the S&P 500, probably.
Hmm.
Be like, like we're in business to make money, and like like I'd be coming into a board meeting like, even if I'd be a gay trans board member could easily come into the board meeting at Budweiser and be like, the fuck is going on here? How come everyone's shitting on my beer and my stock's down 3%? Like we're in the beer business. What the
Yeah.
fuck? And so, I don't know. I just the Kid Rock thing. But Aunt Jemima, I don't know. Just the Kid Rock thing just seemed, I don't know. It just seemed, I don't know. He was so fucking mad, and I was like, okay, like I wasn't. I don't know. I just wasn't prepared to get that mad. I was just like, whatever, like, you know.
Well, and how much is anger and how much is just shtick?
And you know what? And you're right. It's a lot of it's virtue signaling for the internet. Because I'll show
Yeah.
you, and then I'll get the yucks, and these I'll get you for the yucks, and then because if you don't say something, if you don't put up, you know, you're absolutely right. Kid Rock shooting up the 12 the cases of beer was the same as rich little white girls living in penthouses in New York City making their Instagram profiles black for Black Lives Matter when they're burning down black neighborhoods. It's like,
Yeah.
you down with the struggle, huh? Yeah, they're destroying black neighborhoods and you're down with it, so you put a little picture up. So, Kid Rock is like, I'm gonna shoot my machine. Kid Rock found a reason to shoot his machine gun on the internet again. And it's like, I mean, it's like,
Exactly.
okay, like, I mean, I get it. I mean, I'm not against it. Like, I think it was a mistake for this company to do this, and I think they should reap the whirlwind. I mean, if they feel the pain, like those two people that got named in the story, if they lose their jobs, it's like, well, I saw that one coming, you know. But whatever. It just,
Yep.
but is that so? So let me ask you this, because do you drink beer?
I very occasionally have a beer or two, but I probably don't. I probably don't drink a 12 pack in a year.
Okay, well that's okay.
But but I drink old man beer. I drink Pabst Blue
Pabst. See,
Ribbon.
I remember Pabst. I remember it used to call PBR, Pabst Blue Ribbon.
Yep.
So that's considered old man beer.
Around here, it's considered old man beer. Now, when I go south, when I was traveling on business down into Oklahoma, Tennessee, places down there, Schlitz and PBR is not old man beer. It's considered hipster beer.
Now it's hipster beer.
Hipster beer down there. Up here, you can't give PBR away. When I was racing, I'd throw a few beers in the cooler for after the races. And, if I put Budweiser or Miller Lite, I'd drink a beer and the next day I'd look at my cooler and the other 12 or the other 11 were gone. Everybody get in my cooler and drink my beer. Well, I found a 30 pack of hams. Now that's going back a long ways. And I threw hams in there, and at the end of the season, I still had like 13 of them.
Okay. So beer, like, so there's dudes be like, I have a chance to grab a beer, and they're like, I'll skip that. They'll skip a free beer even if it's
Ho- Holy cow, what is this crap?
wow. Okay.
Wouldn't touch it. Same way with PBR. But as soon as I went south to Oklahoma, every hipster down there is drinking PBR and Schlitz.
Yeah, I'm trying to remember. My father drank beer, and I think I remember Schlitz. I remember PBR. The only time I ever even saw Coors or heard of Coors was the Smokey and the Bandit movies.
Yeah.
Um, because we lived in Virginia, in West Virginia. Um, and I guess Coors you couldn't get it across the Mississippi. Is that right? Did I have that right? Am I remember that right?
I think it was the
Yeah.
Mississippi, yeah.
Um,
Back in the
was
70s.
there a beer called Stroh's?
Oh yeah, drank a ton of that in high
Okay, I
school.
seem to remember I think my father drank Stroh's beer.
Yeah.
I think.
Yeah, that was in the 80s. That was a fairly popular
Okay.
beer.
So yeah, well, I don't even know.
But when you're 17 or 18, you'll drink whatever, you can get your hands on
Yeah,
then.
I remember. I knew some in in school, and these these kids they were like going to have a party, and they got some, and the kid came back with it was some kind of beer with malt liquor or malt in it, malt something in it, and they were all kinds of pissed off because he grabbed the wrong beer. And I think one of the other kids was like, "Hey, man, get that beer," and it's I think set them up or something. But I don't even know what that is. So I guess I maybe it's considered. Is it considered black beer? Is that right? Is that considered? Do I have that right?
Oh, like the old Schlitz malt liquor, and there's a few others. I don't know what it kind of tastes like beer, but only worse. Uh, you used to be able to buy like a 32-ounce bottle for like 89 cents back in the day. Uh, I have a buddy. We have what we call a shitty beer bet. We'll pick a big dirt late model race, and I'll pick a guy, he'll pick a guy, and then whoever wins gets to pick a shitty beer that the other guy has to drink. And the rule is it can't be skunked and it can't be warm. So the first one I won, I got him a can of Schlitz, and I think it took him an hour to chew through that one can of Schlitz. And we made a rule that malt liquor was not considered beer.
What like
It was so bad that we would not it's not eligible for the shitty beer
so is
bet.
malt liquor? So the malt beer is malt beer different than malt liquor? Or is it just malt called malt liquor? So is it cheaper to make if it's got malt in it? Is that
I don't know the ins and outs of it. Otherwise, other than it just tastes like really shitty strong beer.
okay? Yeah, I, yeah.
Uh, some of our listeners probably know what it is more than I do. It's one of them. You take a swig of that, and it's like, nah, I'm drinking iced tea for the rest of the
I
night.
mean, I'm sure there's a lot of listeners that are like screaming, at the computer, at the iP or whatever they listen to this, and they're like, they know all the answers. Like, I'm just not the dude. I don't know shit about alcohol at all. Like, I mean, I've gotten some of it in my eyes in fights, but that's pretty much it. I literally don't drink. I've
Yeah.
worn way much more alcohol. Let me tell you a story. I got pulled over once. I was coming home from work, and I was checking something, and I pulled in the gas station, and a cop pulled in behind me, and I pulled right at the pump, and he's like, "Hey, you were kind of weaving back there," and I'm like, "Oh, I apologize. I was leaving this place, whatever," and I was working, And he's like, "How much you had to drink?" I'm like, "Oh no, I don't." I say, "If you smell beer on me, no, I was working. I'm covered in it. I don't drink." And he did the eye test on me, didn't he have me, but it was like, I mean, he came to my window and put the window down, and I reeked because it was a big ass fight, and like alcohol was everywhere, and I was literally covered in beer, like my hair was wet with beer. Like I've worn cases and cases and cases of beer, but not, you know, no, I don't drink it. So
Coffee, bacon, tobacco, pine trees. Is there anything that smells better? Believe it or not, there is. And it's a fresh leather holster. If you stop by craftholsters.com, you will open the door to a safe and comfortable carry. We've got holsters for both concealed and open carry, semi autos and revolvers, righties and lefties, and all of that at a reasonable price. Visit www.craftholsters.com for more info.
hey, I got a question for you. We had a
Okay.
guy, his profile handle, he's a regular. I think it's OG Dad Bod is his name. I think he listens to the podcast. And so he asked me, he goes, because he was looking at the 2011 stuff, and he goes, "Do you know about all the 320s blowing up?" And I'm like, "No. I mean, I'm aware of the negligence, I'm aware of the discharges. But now, apparently," and I was like, "What are you talking about?" And he was like, "What's the guy's name? Uh, um, he's been around forever. Not Brian Enos. Ben Stoger. The shooter Ben
Okay.
Stoger. He's like, Ben Stoger's been talking about it." And so I did some searching, and it looks to me like there's a fair number of 320s that are probably kabooming out of battery. That's what it looks like. Like these guns are coming apart. It looks like it. They're. I don't know if they're destroying the firearms module inside officially, but what they're doing is they're kabooming that the grip module. The gun breaks in half, and so the grip module splits from the upper, and and then it kind of looks like a Russian tank in Ukraine, like the top just pops off of it. And like
Hmm.
I mean, like they damage the slides and damage the sides. Have you are there a bunch of 320s blowing up around you at ranges or at matches or anything like that? Have you heard?
I've not heard of any. I've got a couple, and I've got one I've run the absolute piss out of with super hot hand loads actually, and not had any issues. There was the drop issue they claimed to have fixed, but we've got some PD guys running them, and I haven't heard of any issues with them, other than they're kind of big and clunky.
Yeah, I know Doc has one. Doc has one of the M17s, and he has a Wilson grip module for it, and so it's got the thumb safety and all that. But he doesn't shoot it that much. He's put a red
Yeah.
dot on it because it's cut for a red dot. He's kind of playing like his one of his daughters bought him a red dot for Christmas, so he was kind of like fiddling with that a little bit. But he hasn't shot it enough to see if it'll blow up. But I mean, I kind of eat my own words because I remember like in the 2011 comments, somebody made you know talked about like why their Glock is so much better, and I'm like, well, hey, like I've been around a long time, and I said, the Glock still holds the world record as the number one gun to fire out a battery, and which they will. A Glock will absolutely fire out a battery, but
Yeah.
it doesn't typically destroy the gun or take the gun completely out of action unless it's a 40. And since the 40s have been kind of going away, when the 40s fire out a battery, or that unsupported chambers they let loose, if they let loose with the unsupported chamber, it tends to go right down through the trigger guard, and it there's been a couple instances like police officers, it's crippled them. Their trigger finger was in the trigger,
Yeah.
and it is like it's crippled them. Like I mean, they can't. they can't use their trigger finger, and it's like oof, but
Yeah.
that kind of it was got kind of I don't know if that was the Gen was that Gen 3s or was that Gen 4s? Maybe it was Gen.
Gen 3s were the ones that were having a lot of the issues with the unsupported
Yeah.
chambers, and then I believe they claimed to have fixed
Yeah,
that
the
with the
Gen 4
Gen
was built
4s.
to the Gen 4 was built to solve the problem because why that's right, I remember now. The Gen 3s basically Glock was like, "Oh, we'll do 40." They just took the same gun and did a 40, and I don't know if initially they even put different springs in it. And then they were and like I remember we had some come apart around here, and Doc was even to take. They took some kind of. They took the parts of one. It was a PD gun. It was 40, and it blew apart and shot the things down. And so they took it to the major defense contractor around here that has high level equipment, and they were able to get some kind of electron microscope to look at it. One of the scientists, and they looked at the failure, and he guys literally like, yeah, it looks like this thing was fired about 8,000 times before it let loose, and it was a fatigue and this and this and this. And they checked with the guy the PD, and they're like, yeah, he probably has about 8,000 rounds through it, and it let loose. And yeah, and that's what the cause. That's in the Gen 4s, were much beefier guns because Glock didn't want to have to make. Well, see, Glock wanted to have one gun because it's smart, because it's cheaper. We're going to make one gun with one slide, and we'll just rechamber it. And then they did it with a 40, and then it was having issues. So then they did the Gen 4s to absorb the 40. But if you remember, the very, very, very first Gen 4s, they started having issues with a 9mm. They had to change the spring settings on those to get them to run every time and all with all the 9mm ammo. And basically, if I recall, it was
Mm-hmm.
basically Glock was like, okay, we'll make this gun, we'll spring it to run 9mm, but then they discovered, well, Glock to them 9mm is 124 grain NATO loads, and you got all these Americans running around with this 115 grain ammo, and that caused problems.
Yeah.
So we're just going down memory lane of all the gun issues.
Well, about the only thing we haven't hit as far as guns blowing up are the old Beretta 92s.
Yeah, that was
But that was, the stories you always hear, are of the slides blowing off of them. And, that's not actually what was happening. I think you touched on this a little bit on the pod yesterday. These were frame fissures where the recoil lug was going through special operations groups that were putting ungodly numbers of rounds through these things on a daily basis, and they started having frame failures was the actual
there
issue.
was always a rumor that people would, look, you hear this stuff and it becomes wives' tales and it turns into FUD lore. And I don't want to be accused of FUD lore, but one of the
Yeah.
things that used to go around when people would defend the Beretta and they had solved the issue was, well, a bunch of them Navy SEALs were putting that really hot 9mm Hurtenberger subgun ammo in it, and it wasn't designed for that. And it's like, well, okay, I guess I don't know, but didn't Beretta?
Yeah.
But they they ended up changing. Didn't they do the was it the Brigadier slide? Didn't they beef up the slide because they had a perception? People were like, these guns are going to come apart, so they came up with a beefier slide. I think wasn't that the Brigadier? Do I have that right? Yeah.
Yeah.
So yeah,
Yep.
I mean, we can do this for everybody. I mean,
Yep.
we can. I mean, there's been plenty of 1911s that have, I mean, have shit the bed. So
There's not a gun out there. There's not a gun manufacturer out there that does not experience some kind of failure. It doesn't matter what brand it is. If you can, if you've never had some type of failure, you've never had some type of breakage, you're not shooting it very much.
yeah. Oh yeah. I mean, my opinion's always been breaking a gun is kind of like a blessing and a privilege. Like people that want to get into shooting guns, because it's easy, it's easy to buy shit, and it's not easy if you're buying expensive guns, like if you're saving your money. But, like if a kid
Hmm.
came to me and he's like, I want to get an AR-15, and I don't want to buy a Bushmaster at the local gun store. I want to save my money and get a Noveske. And I'm like, okay, I get it. Style points, the whole, the what was the phrase you used about the hipster, like the hipster gun, like the hipster beer? It's like
Hipster,
that's a
yep,
cool
hipster gun,
hipster
yep.
gun. Like, okay, I get it. Like, I really do. But you'd be better off buying that cheaper AR and a couple cases of ammo, and learning and figuring out and experiencing, and even breaking the gun is fine because you just get it fixed. It's not going to be much to fix it. And, you know, going somewhere with it. What ends up happening is a lot of gun guys, they'll buy an expensive gun and then they park it. And that's like they're gun guys, and they're sitting on a gun that they really, I've had it gun for 20 years, it never malfunctioned. How many, it's like, okay, how many rounds have you fired through that gun in 20 years? You know, because these dudes
Hmm.
don't shoot.
One of my favorite memes it's a picture of an AR pistol basically. But the caption reads, "Most people don't need a $2,000 AR. They need a $700 AR and thirteen
Yeah.
hundred dollars worth of
Yeah,
training."
that's true. I mean, you got to start somewhere, and you have to be willing to suck, and it's easy to
Yeah,
buy the
that's
expensive gun and take a picture of it, put it on the internet. Like, I we used to talk about this on the pod, like dudes that are like, here's my, 1911 guys, H&K guys. Here's my everyday carry gun. Then they show a picture of it, and it's like, wow, that looks like Playmate of the Month quality photograph there. Like that gun looks like it's like that gun looks better than when it left the gun store. You carry that every day, huh? Really?
yeah.
That's your carry gun. Yeah, it's like, okay, that's fine. I'll just, show you my fucking carry gun, and people get horrified. They're like, oh, the finish on, they don't. It's like, I like the finish on my gun, like, my Wilson gun. It's like, I don't think Bill Wilson likes to finish on my gun. I think that's why because they know their customer, and they get all they get butthurt over any scratch. But it's like, okay, you know, like people will buy gun, like there's these battle worn finishes, like, and they're cool looking. Like you see these guys, like, these companies own, like I saw one the other day. It was a Nighthawk gun. It was a Thunder Ranch Nighthawk pistol, 1911, and it had this.
Hmm.
I don't think they call it battle worn, but it looks like this really cool patina, like it's been distressed, and it's like, well, normally it
Yeah,
would take, I don't know, 10 years or 15 or 20 years to get a gun that look like that. But now you can buy one, you can buy one out of the box. We used to call that stolen valor, but now that's an upgrade that you paid extra $200 for the battle ward finish, and it's just like, yeah, I mean,
it's yeah. It's like the chicks that go buy jeans. You can buy a pair of jeans for $40, or you can spend two hundred and forty
yeah.
dollars and they come
Well,
pre-ripped.
I mean, I want, if I want to buy, I want Cindy Crawford herself to show up at my house and rip my jeans. You're gonna, you know, so. But anyway, I just so when yeah, she'll get a
She'll get a
pass.
pass on that.
Yeah.
I can see that one, but Linda down at the local Choke and Puke pub and bar,
Hey, now
not so much.
I will tell you something. I have spent quite a lot of time in the choke and puke. That is, I've got this. I mean, that was my career. So I mean, any port in a
Any
storm
port in
is
a
right. Let
storm.
me tell you, man. I'm glad a lot of these places go out of business, because if I drive by them, I get flashbacks. Like don't like uh the the movie Roadhouse, the movie Roadhouse.
the
Yeah, the double
the double
douche. Like,
douche.
I have, like, they make a comment about, like, oh yeah, the bar in Dayton. It's like, yeah, I've been to that fucking bar in Dayton. It's like many a time, many a time. That's like, yeah, I get it. Just
Yeah, I don't even want to admit how many times I've seen
yeah,
that
the
movie.
double, yeah.
So,
Don't eat, big sign over the don't eat the big white mint. It's like, yeah, I
yeah.
mean, man, like I have literally had to go into a bathroom and held a girl's hair while she's puking in the toilet because her friends are so drunk that they can't help her either. And I'm like, just give me some room here. Just
See, that's when you know you have arrived, when you're allowed into the inner sanctum of five
oh
chicks
yeah,
in the
oh yeah,
bathroom
oh
at
yeah.
once. That's it's
Mm-hmm.
like, what can they all be doing in there? And one night I was actually drug in there, and it's not what a person thinks.
There was this so I would have tell this story. I shouldn't, but I am. So there was a bar in on the river in Cincinnati, and it's called the Waterfront. And surprise, it's on the river, hence the name. And it was owned by a guy named Jeff Ruby. And Jeff Ruby is a character in Cincinnati. He's still around, and he owned a bunch of restaurants and bars, but they were all restaurants. But they would have nightclubs in them too. And he owned like high end steakhouses. Like the precinct used to be an old Cincinnati Police Department police station. They turned it into a high end restaurant, steakhouse, and he had Jeff Ruby's. He owned Carlo and Johnny's. He owned the waterfront. Various would open and close, whatever. And I mean, all these Bengals are around.
Mhm.
A lot of celebrities, a lot of football players. A lot of things. And so I would interface with Jeff Ruby fairly regularly, and Jeff Ruby was kind of an ass. Um, like one time, like here's kind of a Jeff. Here's an aside story. So O.J. Simpson is right. So O.J. Simpson,
Mhm.
did what he did, and when he got out of jail, or when he no, he didn't get out of jail. When he was, yeah, when it was over, Jeff Ruby, it was at the waterfront. O.J. Simpson, for some reason, was in Cincinnati and eating with some people in this restaurant. Jeff Ruby came out into the dining room and told O.J. Simpson to leave his restaurant in the middle of dinner, just to show, and that's Jeff
Oh
Ruby
wow.
just showing off. And the thing is, Jeff Ruby was
Yeah.
friends with O.J. Simpson. Like if you were a celebrity, came to Cincinnati, Jeff Ruby's going to manhandle you, do whatever. And so my point is, Jeff Ruby is always hanging around with celebrities, taking pictures. They all knew who he was. He's one of these local kind of. I'm not. If the Rubies hear this, I'm not saying anything out of turn, but they're a little, a little slimy, like a little, like just like that. It's you know, Jeff Ruby once got into an argument with his wife while they were going down the road, and he got pissed off and stepped out of the car at 50 miles an hour, and he got brain damage
Oh.
from it. So anyway, this was after the brain damage. So I'm at the waterfront and I'm working my way through. Um, and Jeff Ruby was there that night. He was drunk, and I'm working my way through this, like this, going from the restaurant to get to this nightclub area, and there's this like catwalk thing that like not a lot of people know about. And I'm coming through this catwalk. It's enclosed, and Ruby's coming the other way. And he's like, he stops me. He's like, hey, he goes, I know you. I'm looking at him. I'm like, yeah. He goes, you're an actor on TV. I'm like, no. And he goes, you do the news. You do the news. I go, no, Jeff, I fucking work for you. And he at that point he's like, "Oh, you're not famous?" Does it miss? Literally just turns and walks away because I had nothing to offer him. So that's like I've got a million. I've got a million of these stories. Oh my God, I got a million of these stories. Um, I'll tell this one. Same restaurant, same place, Ruby's, and there was a guy. What was this guy's name? Guy, guy. This guy's name. I'm not going to say his last name. This guy's name was Mike, and so Mike at the time was this was 30 years ago, 25 years ago, close to 30 years ago. Um, Mike was. I just have to think. I have to because he was much older than me at the time. This guy was a mid 40s, maybe early 50s, so like my age now. And he was this kind of slimy business hanger-on guy, trying to social climber in Cincinnati. So I'd bump into him like if I was working places, he'd be you know he'd show up at the waterfront, he'd show up at the whatever places or special events, and he decided one day that he wanted to open. He decided he was going to hire strippers. Like he was gonna open up a stripping business. And so then he found this little girl that I guess was a stripper, and very quickly he's dating. He's like my age now, so he's mid to late 40s, early 50s, and he's dating this 21, 22-year-old little kind of like, I mean, cute girl, but not like, not, I mean, she's not like, some like great looking stripper. She's cute and young and whatever. And you got to realize, like a 20-year-old girl, she, she's dating, she's broke as a joke. She's knows guys that are broke as a joke. And she meets this guy who is a businessman. So I don't know what he makes, but he's got money. So like immediately she's moving into his apartment or his condo. He lived in one of the high-rise condos, and she's driving like a BMW or something. You know what I mean? Like she thinks to a 20-year-old girl, she thinks she has literally hit the jackpot. He's making a payments on some car he can't even afford, which is fine. So it's this 25-year difference minimum between these two, maybe 30-year difference, and trouble's coming. Like this, you're like, this is going to end in tears. This is going to end in tears. And um, one night they were at the waterfront on a weekend night, and they got into some kind of blowout because he was probably fucking around on her because she thinks he's the one, and and he thinks she's that one, and so she storms out of the club, goes out to the valet. There's valets and security. This is all the stuff, and she gets her car, and his car, because he drove a nice car, because the valet, well, and he's this high roller wannabe guy. His car's parked kind of up towards the front of the restaurant. Like if you valet a Lamborghini, it's not going to the back of the parking lot. It's going to go up front where they can watch it, right? If you got a nice car, or if you tip them a lot of money, your car is going to be up. Your car is going to be up close to the valet stations. Well, his car is up close to the valet stations. And she's mad and she's drunk, and she gets in her car and she sees his car and she plows into his car right at the valet stand. Bam! And everyone's like, "Holy fuck!" Throws it reverse, puts it back in drive. Bam! She is hitting this car over and over and over again, and literally it's like, oh shit. Like they didn't know what to do. Like, they're valet guys. Like they don't have guns. They don't even have they can't even break the windows on these cars. So eventually police had to come and scoop everybody up. But it was just like one that's like, yeah, just another night in the in the bar business. I mean, just you've seen it. You've seen it all.
I had more fun sitting in the bars drinking Coca-Cola and just watching the shenanigans than I ever did getting drunk in all my different years. You sit back and you can just, a lot of that, you can just see it coming. You can see it brewing, and then all of a sudden, it just hits the
I
fan and you
saw
just have to
I
sit back
saw a
and laugh.
girl at a where was this? I'm trying to remember where it was. It was someplace nice enough. They had lit candles in the center of their tables. So whatever that is, right? And so and this there's a
Yeah.
bunch of these. I don't know what it was, like some kind of event or something. I don't remember who these people were. And she's got long hair. She might have been Asian. I think she was Asian. She had long hair down her ass, and so I don't think she had anything in it. Like she didn't like it wasn't sprayed or permed or whatever they straight black hair. And so she was
Hmm.
showing off dancing or strutting around this this dining. It was a dining room because and she hops up on the table with her ass, throws her legs up in the air, and throws her hair back to like show her whatever, and her hair lays right across. She throws it back. Her long hair lays right across that candle, and literally like it was
Oh
like the
no.
blink of an eye. Boosh! Like it exploded. Like it was 2 feet of hair immediately goes up in flames, and um, everyone's diving, grabbing her. I come running to fucking grab her, and and they actually had to close. They had to close the restaurant because the hair stunk so bad. Like it was horrendous. Like it stunk out the whole place. You're just like, oh fuck, what is that? And it was just, yeah, I mean, just like I have, it just, yeah, yeah, everything, literally everything. So, but anyway, I don't know why I got on that. We're free flowing it tonight. You talk. I've talked enough. I'm gonna get sued by I'm gonna get sued by Mike and the old stripper who bashed his car in.
I've only got one stripper story, but it's funny as hell, or at least it was to me at the time. Since we seem to
Mm-hmm.
have a common theme going tonight, I was at a great big fishing tournament down in Milford, Kansas, which is Milford Reservoir, which is Junction City, Kansas. Uh, so
Immediately, I'm
the
thinking the smell is
Fort
terrible. Go
Riley
ahead. Okay.
military base. So we're down there for like a week. So we get this brilliant idea. Hey, let's go to the titty bar because it's a very large army base. So there's only like
Only
30 of them
30.
in Junction City. So we just Google, and it's like the close. Let's go to the closest one. We'll just start there. And of course, it is the skankiest, stinkiest, stickiest floor stripper bar I have
Those are the
probably
best
ever
kind.
been in. And not this time. I, there was two girls working, and one we actually offered to give her money to put her clothes back on, and the other one was a little, maybe 5 foot tall if she had hooker heels on, and just higher than a kite. Well, my buddy that was with me is about 6'4", and at the time was probably 470, 480. Huge guy. And he's sitting right up there next to the stage, and he's waving, dollar bills around, and she's doing her thing, and he's just sitting on, I call them little cafe chairs. He's just some little metal chairs with a little black padding and
Hmm.
the black back to them. The whole chair weighs like 2 pounds. The cheapest chair you can get in a restaurant. And he's sitting on one of them, and we're already there's about 3 of us already going, maybe he should be
Oh
sitting on
Lord.
2 of these. Because he's a big old boy. And he finally gets the nerve up, and he waves a 20 up in the air because the dollars, she wasn't paying attention to the dollars anymore. So he waves a 20, and she gets started at the back of the stage and gets going on a dead run. And she leaps off the stage, and her plan is to land on his lap, thinking, this will be a
Mm-hmm.
really soft landing. And just about the time she made contact with him, the back 2 legs of the chair started to fold under. And it did that. It was almost like super slow motion. We all knew what was happening, but we couldn't do anything about it. And they both fell. The chairs completely collapsed, knocked 2 tables over. Probably a half dozen pitchers of beer went flying. This poor girl probably did 3 barrel rolls across the floor before winding up against an overturned table. It takes 3 of us to get this old boy up off the floor and back into a chair and make sure he's still alive. She jumps up and basically does the I'm okay and jumps right back up on the stage. And we thought, oh, good Lord, we're going to have to pay for tables and broken glasses and pitch. We're going to get kicked out. The Junkie City Police are coming for us.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, how am I going to explain this one to the wife? DJ didn't skip a beat, said, don't worry, guys, that's 3rd table she's broke this
Well,
week.
that's my kind of strip bar. Like that's the like one that's like gets a little like gets a little rowdy. A little not as formal. Like the last formal strip club that I was in, I've told this story. I'm not going to repeat it on a whole thing, but I was literally thrown out of it like Eddie Murphy in Beverly Hills Cop, except the only difference was like they literally carried me out and threw me through the front doors out onto the sidewalk. The only difference was I went through the front doors open. I didn't go through plate glass. And it's like, okay. Well, actually, it just occurred to me. So, like we've been having all these LGBTQ 1, 2, 3 Bud Light drinker people shooting up the schools. It just occurred to me,
Uh-huh.
this is past couple years, because I was actually having lunch with like a sheriff, the actual sheriff, the elected official sheriff. And he was like, yeah, did you hear about the transsexual that shot up Concepts? I was like, no, what are you talking about? And he's like, yeah, there was a shooting over, it's the next county over. He's like, yeah, there was a shooting at Concepts, which is a strip club in the tri-state. And the slang term for it is conceptions as opposed to concepts. And he's like, yeah, there was a shooting there. And I was like, really? Fucking in there? I was like, it's still open? He's like, yeah. He said it was apparently it was a transsexual. Like, I guess I don't know, maybe the transsexual wanted the job and like was refused. I don't know but like want to go in there and got pissed off and started shooting the gun up. I don't believe anyone was injured, but this happened just a few years ago. Like, this is within the past 2 or maybe 3 years. It's like, what's up with the trannies shooting places? You know, it
Sure
certainly
seems to
seems
be
to
a
be like
developing pattern.
did you hear that there was one in Colorado they just
Uh,
stopped?
yeah, they actually caught it before it was able to happen. And this person had evidently like a whiteboard with maps drawn out and rooms labeled, and I believe it was her sister that actually called the police and ratted her out.
Well,
So her out, him out, it out, whatever the pronouns were. But the sister identified what was going on and actually got the authorities involved in
yeah. I mean,
time.
like, did you see the the one that shot up the one that shot up the Presbyterian school here just in Tennessee like the past week or 10 days, whatever it was? Did you see photographs of
Mm-hmm.
her her bedroom? That was how
Yeah.
how like how someone could live like that and like if she lives with her parents, that they let her live like that. It's like there comes a point, like if you don't know what I'm talking about, and you listen to this podcast, you're like, just everyone talks about the girl and the shooting and the cop coming around the corner, put the 3 rounds in her, and her pronouns went to was were, and that's cool. Like I mean, fuck her, but take a look at her room. Well, she had a room, which is very childish. Like I'm in my room, but like this girl was obviously just not functioning as a person. Like I mean, it's a messy room. Isn't even the take a shipping container full of shit from China and shake it up like Godzilla and all on the floor, and that's what she's living in. And like to live like that is you're obviously having mental health problems. Her family was, I mean, like her family wasn't getting involved. You know what I mean? Like, I mean, yeah, I mean,
They knew she had guns. Their whole excuse
yeah.
is, well, we thought she was getting rid of them.
Like, at some point you got to start. We have to start calling bullshit in our own lives. You know what I mean? Like, it's easy to get on. I'm gonna not to clap on Kid Rock, but it's easy to get on Kid Rock's case and be like, because I'm, I'll shoot up the beer cans because I saw something on the internet. And I'm like, fuck you. But you know what? Because I'm in, 50s. It's like at some point, if you're going to do that, man, I hope everyone in your fucking universe is you got their squared away too. Because it's like you see people that have problems, and if they're in your life, you got to fucking get in there and like start dealing with that. You know what I mean? Like just ignoring these major problems with people that are in your family or your circle or like here in our community, like we call it the tribe. Like that was the phrase like about 10 years ago. Like, oh, my tribe. It's like, oh yeah, yeah. Well, when your tribe is and someone in your tribe is in trouble,
Mm-hmm.
are you going to get involved, or are you just going to let it? You just going to let it devolve into until it ends up being a police blotter, or they do something stupid.
Well, and 9 out of 10 times when they're interviewing people after the fact, there's always a handful of people that well, there was always something that never was quite right about that boy, or we were pretty nervous being around him. Then why
Yeah.
didn't you say something? You're not a if you say something, you're in gun circles. I kind of hate this the way some of this is portrayed. But if you see somebody that makes you nervous, especially if you're in the 2A community and they're making you nervous, there's a really good chance there's something there that needs to be looked into. So you're not a rat, you're not a narc, you're not a bootlicker. If anything, you're trying to you know pre- prevent that shit stain in the 2A community. You're trying to prevent senseless violence. You're trying to do what any reasonable human should do. So the stigma that's attached to getting involved kind of gets under my skin once in a while. The if you see something, say something gets overused, but at
You
the
know,
end of the day, it's also not
and
being
see
used
something, say
enough.
something doesn't mean
If
you
that
have
makes any
to,
sense.
you know, like, I don't know, like someone's going to have to do something about that. It's like, no, you're going to have to fucking do, like, dude, what the fuck? And I don't talk about this too much, but there's a person that I used to know that was very involved in the gun community. As a matter of fact, this person was on a lot of gun forums and was getting fairly prominent. And this person, because I knew this person in real life, this person worked for the federal government, and this person had a horrendous look. I have a bad temper, so saying he has a bad temper was the wrong. He he would get obsessed with just the slights. Like, we'd work out the same gym, and he would get involved in these dramas with these girls. just like, and I remember talking to a mutual acquaintance of ours, and apparently this person knew him when he was in high school. Apparently, it was like one of his high school teachers, like knew him when he was a student in high school, and was asking me, he's like, man, I'm really worried one day he's going to do something to himself. And I was like, yeah, like, I mean, it was just, he just, there was a lot not working with this guy, and just a lot of emotional, you know. Matter of fact, he worked in a gun. He eventually got a job working at a gun store part time. And it's like this. I mean, like, what if? I mean, this guy.
Mhm.
He never made threats to, like, like he was going to go shoot up a school or do something like that. But it was just he would everything was so he would take everything was so personal. He would rage, like, you the conversations, you'd just be like, fucking Christ. Like, eventually, a lot of we just had to kind of just drop him. We just couldn't. He was so toxic, and it was like, I think he's kind of gotten his life together. I think he's retired from federal service, and I think he did find a girl to get remarried to, because he was divorced, and like, it's just a disaster. And never could, because women
Mhm.
wouldn't want to be involved with him because he was toxic. You know what I mean? He couldn't. So there was all of that drama. Then he was broke because he got divorced. He worked for the federal government, so he didn't make any fucking money. Like, you can see where all this is going. And, he is,
Yeah.
like, I went to his wedding. Like, he found this girl, and they got married. And I'll tell you what, like, I've definitely distanced myself. Like, we don't talk at all. I haven't talked to him in 10 years, at least. But I'll tell you what, I've
Mhm.
wondered, I'm like, man, if that marriage doesn't work out, you know what I mean? Because sometimes things don't work out. I wonder if, like, one day I'm gonna, like, open the newspaper and be like, oh no, that guy. You know what I mean? He did something, because he just can't handle
Yeah.
rejection. He can't handle the setbacks in life. And it was just, like, what do you do? Like, he hasn't, well, I'll tell you what, here's an interesting thing too. So, um, I noticed when we were friends, he never got a gun permit, like a CCW permit. He worked in a gun store, and like, did the 4473s, had a little gun collection. He would buy and sell, and he would have to trade and do whatever. And
Mhm.
but he's like, man, why don't you get a gun permit? He's like, well, he's like, I work down in a federal. He's a federal employee, and it's like, him being able to carry a gun to work. He couldn't carry a gun in work. He, didn't want to keep a gun in his car. He's like, I have no real reason. All these, like, man, like, you should, but, like, it's a city, and, like, you should, you could figure some of this out. Like, it's a secured facility. Keep it in your, like, get a gun permit for, like, maybe when you're working in a gun store. What we figured out was, before we had known him, he had, apparently, when he was going through his divorce many years before, he had voluntarily checked himself into some kind of mental health thing at the hospital. And so this was before a lot of this stuff was computerized. And what it was is, he was afraid, because the state of Ohio they claimed they were going to do this thorough background check for you to get your gun permit. And it's state records, and he was afraid. We think he was afraid that if he applied for a gun permit, the mental check would come up, and maybe he would be disqualified from being able to even own a gun. Yeah, and it's like, what do you do? Like, we can't
Yeah.
prove it. I don't know it. It's kind of hearsay. Like, I mean, who am I supposed to tell? You know what I mean? It's like, nothing ever happened.
It's kind of a catch-22, because if you have somebody where guns are a really important part of their life, but they're also having problems coping with life's issues at that moment, but if you turn around and you take the one thing maybe in their life that still gives them pleasure. Say they're hunters or target shooters, and they're afraid to go get help because they're afraid of losing that one avenue of what still gives them pleasure. Then are we creating some ticking time bombs because we're making it to the point where somebody's afraid to go
Yeah.
get help that otherwise would? Because somebody with depression's not necessarily going to go shoot up a movie theater, going to go shoot up a school. They're just having, a lot of them are just having problems coping at this given moment. But they're afraid to go get help because they're afraid they're never going to be able to hunt again because they're going to get their guns taken away.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, and like actually now I think about it, it's been more than 10 years since I talked to him because I mean, hell, I mean, like we've been doing it's way before tactical t-shirts, so it's been 20 years probably since I've been friends with him. And uh what was it? He he was guns were important to him. Like we met as gun people, like at a gym. You know what I mean? And
Mm-hmm.
he was more of like a runner, and I was more of a weightlifter. You gun guy, you gun guy, yeah. So hey, how's it going? How's it going? And then uh, but what I know what, and I always I noticed as I was progressing in my shooting career, because I definitely had a shooting career and was doing things and accomplishing things, and was hired to do things and invited to do things. It seemed he was not supportive. He was not supportive. He was almost resentful, and it was just
Yeah.
like, like it's like when like I've heard Jordan Peterson say, like watch if you have good news you want to share that's going on in your life and you tell somebody, watch how they react. And if they're not generally actually just happy for you, that's a real bad warning sign. And I didn't notice it until I heard Jordan Peterson say something like that. I was like, oh my God. Like, I didn't even like this was way worse than what I even thought. Like this guy was
Yeah.
like kind of tearing me down a little bit. And that's a lot of where it came from. Like there was just a lot of problems here, and it was just he happened to be a gun guy, and very, what. And the thing is, an extremely knowledgeable gun guy, like extreme, like it was almost like he could have been a content creator contributor to John 1911.
Yeah.
I mean, he knew everything about everything. He absorbed and read everything, but you know what? He couldn't really shoot that well. He's one of those guys. You know what I mean? And so if he's got
Mm-hmm.
the information, he can be in the gun store and he can look important. But, you actually have to shoot for performance. He never put the work in. And so he couldn't hang. So there was a lot of, there was many layers of problems there, and it was just like, well, he's a grown adult and we just couldn't be around him anymore. It just kind of, we just, a bunch of us just decided like we just cut him loose. Like we tried and talked and, that, but to get back to like the point of the girl and shoots up the school, like the story about like, you look at that girl's room and just like, how the hell could you let somebody that your family lives in your house live like that?
Yeah, I think my bedroom looked like that once.
Oh yeah.
I was about 13, and my dad decided he was going to teach me a lesson because I didn't put something away. So I got the good old about day 4 of boot camp, completely room turned upside down, everything piled up in the middle of the floor, and told I had about 15 minutes to get it squared away. And that is the only time that my room ever looked like that.
Yeah. I don't, the
My
thing is,
my parents would have skinned my ass if my room
yeah,
ever would
I
have
don't
looked like
believe
that.
your room ever looked like that because you literally this room you couldn't have walked across this room if it was on fire.
Yeah.
Like, I mean, you literally would have to crawl. Like, this was unbelievable. This was this is just like a joke. And like you see, it's like I see that, and you're like, oh, there's a lot more going on here than blaming, the elementary school for your problems in life. Much like
Yeah.
my friend who we had the drop, he blamed everybody else for all of his problems.
Yeah.
It was just like, dude, we got.
Yeah. Her room was almost like hoarder TV show level.
Yeah, that's exactly what it was, and it was kind of like, woof. It's like, Anyway, we're kind of rambling. I don't know, like, I mean,
Yeah.
I want to talk about something positive. I mean, I don't want to talk about the girl that had sex with her dog, and I don't want to talk about the information about the Las Vegas gunman, and tell me something fun. I need something fun before I get to the police blotter.
Something fun. I learned something about reloading that I did not know,
What?
which there's lots of stuff I don't know. I have never reloaded for belted magnums.
Oh,
So,
really?
7 millimeter, 300 Win Mag.
I love
I've,
belted magnums. I love 300 Win Mag.
uh, but they reload a little different.
Uh-huh.
So they actually headspace off the
Uh-huh.
belt.
Yes, they do. I do know that. I never loaded them, but I do know they had space off the bat. That belt is very important.
Yes. So everything else basically headspaces off the neck, off the shoulder. Uh, so what I've learned is
Is that the
with
ogive or
the
whatever, or the datum point or whatever they call that?
well, that's more of your bullet profile. Uh, what I learned was you can't trust die manufacturers when they tell you how to initially set your dies. So I got a brand new set of Hornady 300 Winchester Magnum dies. You run the ram all the way up, screw the resizing die down until it just touches the shell plate. Boom, you're supposed to be set. What I found out, I bought a headspace collator, and I took a round that was resized according to the way the factory told me to set the dies up, and compared it against a once fired round out of my Ed Brown, and I was working that brass 12 thousandths in the shoulder.
Oh, wow.
So that is why a lot of guys bitch about belted magnums only getting 2 and 3 reloadings out of them before they get case head separations.
Hmm.
So the fix to that is to start backing that resizing die off until you get about 2 thousandths shoulder bump, and then you lock it down. The easiest way to do that is with a headspace collator. They're about $50. The one I got is a Hornady. There's several companies that make them. But I started going through some of my other ammo that I've been resizing and just setting the dies up like the instructions tell you on that resizing die. Almost all of them are way overworking that brass.
Yeah, I mean, I don't reload. I should reload 4570, but I don't, and I don't. I mean, I don't know the problems of reloading belted magnums, but I know I love 300 Win Mag. What bullet weight are you loading?
I've got some 168s and some 175s,
Okay.
and I've got about 4 different powders. So I'm gonna do some ladder tests and see what groups and I don't get terribly hung up on standard deviation for velocity. Uh, I start looking, at my 100-yard groups to get it dialed in, and then I start looking at what my groups are doing at range. Uh, the 175s tend to not go subsonic quite as fast, so I think that's probably what I'm going to wind up going with, but we're going to see what that rifle likes.
How far do you plan on shooting? And have you thought about loading a heavier bullet? Because on the 300 Win Mag, you can go 180, 190. You can definitely go a lot heavier.
Yeah, I've got some 175 Sierra Match Kings. I've got just a whole butt ton of
So you
them.
just are you just
Uh,
using what you've got? Okay.
So I've got some 208s and some 212s. I'm going to try
There
some
you go.
AMAXs also.
Okay.
Uh, but I tend to load more for specific applications. So uh, I very seldom find one load that works really good at 500 and works really good at 1,000. So a lot of times, if I'm going to be doing 500-600 yard work, I'll have this particular load that shoots well out of this rifle. And then if I'm going to try and stretch out to say 1,000, I'll use a different load that particular rifle likes at 1,000.
Yeah. I mean, I love that Ed Brown rifle. The only thing that made that rifle better if it had the woodland camo stock that Ed Brown used to sell. That would be perfect.
Hey, can of Krylon, we can make that
I
happen.
know I don't know. That's one of the guns I probably wouldn't spray paint. I spray paint $8,000 Ed Brown or $8,000 Blaser rifle, but it's like yeah, I don't know if I'd spray paint an old Ed Brown rifle. So I hope
No, I'm
I
not going to spray paint that one.
yeah
I tease you about spray painting the scar, but it's probably going to stay all black too.
yeah um
It,
uh yeah. So I don't know. I want to see more. I think our listeners and our readers would love to see more as you work up loads for the Scar 20. Doc is selling his Scar 20 probably, and I'm personally interested in the Ed Brown, the 300 Win Mag Ed Brown, seeing what you do with that.
yeah,
So
I'll have to get out in your neck of the woods sometime, and I'll bring my Scar 20, and I'll bring that Ed Brown and a
we've
couple
only
others,
got
and
600 yards set up at the John 1911 range right now. We don't have 1,000. Like in theory, we do, but I got to push through. I got to push through another hill with a bulldozer. And right now, I'm hemorrhaging. I need to build a barn. I'm not gonna be. I'm not gonna pay any more bulldozer work. So, we're gonna. We
yeah,
could fake maybe 700. You could fake it. As long as you can qualify on my 500. Be like, yeah, we'll back you up. We can throw you on the back of a truck at 7. But I've got a 600 for you. Uh,
yeah, 600's fun.
yeah. So,
Uh, but we'll get you behind that Ed Brown, and
oh my God,
I'm
I've never shot an Ed Brown bolt action rifle. That was that was, they're cool because it's like the Winchester 70 and the Remington 700. It's the hybrid. He
it's kind of a
what did
hybrid,
he call it?
yeah.
The 704? Is that what he called that?
I believe so,
Yeah,
yeah.
old Ed Brown.
The 704 action,
Yeah. I hope
and then he
old Ed's doing well. I haven't talked to him in a while. He and I used to be friends, so we would
yeah,
talk. So I talked to him. I used to talk to him at SHOT Show. No one else liked him, but I like Ed. Um, I get Ed. When you're talking to Ed Brown, you're getting an opinion. You know what I mean? Like when he
yep.
builds you a gun, it's and like he's not going to build you like you know, you're like, yeah, I want a 10 millimeter officer, you know, bull barrel or no, a 10 millimeter officer with a bushing, and he'd be like, nope. I said, I'm not building that piece of shit. I can put, and then he'd literally be like, you're not putting my name on that. Like
Yeah,
literally, he was real.
go talk to Rock Island with that bullshit
Yeah,
because I ain't building that
and he
crap.
literally like he would be like be like, can you believe this guy asked me to bid? He would list off the specs. He'd be like, you are not putting my name on that gun.
Yeah.
I remember one time we were talking, and so how like I've got the uh I've got a 9 millimeter pistol, an Ed Brown pistol, which doesn't really work that well, and it's a two tone. It's a it's a black top and a stainless bottom, like the old school 70s, like the Packmeyer Combat Special look. I love that look,
Hmm.
and he told me, he said, I had a guy ask if he would do the reverse, if he would do a sprayed frame and a stainless slide. And Ed, he was like, no. He's like, I'm not doing that. He's like, because it's not going to wear, it looks goofy and it's not going to wear right. He says, you're not going to put my name on that gun. And
Yeah.
he wasn't like laughing about it. He wasn't angry, but he was just like, He's like,
Just matter of
he's
fact.
like, my name is Ed Brown, and when I'm not around to answer questions as to why this gun is not good, he's like, I don't want my name on this gun.
Yeah.
And it's like a lot. There's a lot of company. No, very few companies. Very few. There's some. I'm not going to name the ones that I think, but I know there's a lot of companies out there. They would literally, because it's business. If you want a bullshit pistol and you'll buy 100,000 of them, we're going to make it for you. I mean, yeah. I mean, whether it's good for your brand or not. So.
Well, let's face it. I'm kind of an old Smith whore. There's some really goofy Lou Horton specials out there from the 80s and early 90s.
Oh
So
yeah. I mean, dude, a lot.
some of them were really good, and some of them were like, "What the hell were you thinking?"
Dude, a lot of those Lou Horton guns are ugly as hell. They
Yeah.
were ugly as hell. Ugly as hell. Not all of them. I had a few. I had a revolver. I had a Lou Horton revolver. Um, one of them. It was a mountain. I don't know what it was. Um, but like some of that stuff was like, ugh. They're gone though now. Aren't? Isn't Lou Horton gone?
Yeah, they've been gone for a
Yeah,
while.
4 or 5 years, right?
Uh, yeah, I've had several Lou Hortons. Probably the best one I had was a 3-inch 657 Lou Horton in 41 mag. And I got stupid and traded it off and wish I had it back. But
Oh yeah.
that and just a lot of the stuff that comes out of like the Smith and Wesson Performance Shop now. It's to me it's almost like making what I call the Gucci Glocks. There's got to be this competition of who can make the most dicked up, chopped up, carved up looking Glock out there.
Well, people are trying, they're trying to get the price per SKU up, because the reality is a Glock is a fantastic gun. And if you look at over time, like the 320s doesn't seem to be holding up. Um, and like all these kids, they, before the 2011 kind of came back and, Wilson did the X frame gun, which I personally think is going to win. I think it's going to win that argument.
Yeah.
And I realize I could be biased, but we'll see. But they need something. Like I know Ed Brown. I think Ed Brown was doing. They were doing like custom, or they probably still are, like Smith and Wesson M&P pistol guns. And it's like, okay. I mean, like they're just, they're it's a good way to make money. I mean, look at Wilson. Wilson has been very successful with that.
Yeah.
Wilson does. They do all the parts. They do all the custom. They do custom Glock work. They do like all the 320 stuff. They're all over the P365 stuff. They do all that stuff. And like a lot of these companies are struggling because they're if they're on a gun silo that a lot of people aren't buying it, they're like, and like how much does a P365 cost?
You're probably somewhere around
Yeah,
550.
I mean, it's already somebody else's gun,
Yeah.
so there's.
A 365, a 320, a Glock 19. They're all in that 550,
Mhm. And
$600
like
range.
there are those companies that what is it's I can't remember. There were a couple companies that they would do the custom Glocks. They would be like, you'd end up with a Glock pistol that was worth 25 or 3,000, $2,500 or $3,000. Would have a gold barrel and all this. Who was, I can't,
Oh, like the Zevs?
Zev, yeah. Who was the other one? Are they
Yeah.
still? Um, I know. As a matter of fact, I remember I saw in like I was like wow, like talk about like how things have changed when Ed Brown Senior is not really around anymore. Ed Brown was doing a Zev 1911.
Hmm.
So it was a commander gun, and
Yeah.
they basically would send, I think, the slide and maybe the barrel, I mean, whatever, some parts. They would send them to Zev, and Zev would put all the cuts in them that I think it was Zev. It could be another company, but like they would put all these, so it would look like one of those Zev Glocks. It'd have all these
Hmm.
cuts and lines and reliefs in it, and they nitride or gold TI the titanium plate the barrel, and then Ed Brown would sell this Zev 1911, and it looked cool, but it was just cosmetic work. It was like what's it was there's some way trying to figure out how to you know they were trying to jump on that Zev custom Gucci Glock bandwagon, and it's a struggle for some companies.
But you aren't, a lot of times, the thing that gets me is you're not getting any more performance out of the gun. You're getting style points, you're getting curb appeal if that's your thing, but are you getting $2,000 worth of added performance with a Zev over a stock Glock?
I don't know. I remember.
You know,
This was it was kind of a famous story that uh, uh, he's. I'm gonna smoke a turd in hell. For James Yeager, the story James Yeager would tell. Somebody showed up at his training facility with a bunch of these aftermarket parts in their Glock, and James was a big, and rightfully so. Like I worked at a place very similar to what Yeager's place was, and they were all about the Glock and all the other stuff. I was the only guy running a 1911, but my shit worked. And but this guy showed up at Yeager's place with all these aftermarket parts and his Glock was falling apart. His Glock was failing, and Yeager's like, "You have all the original parts to this gun?" And he's like, "Yeah." He's like at lunch, they're like, "Yeah, put them all back in." It's like I'm gonna buy them off of you, and and like whatever it is, and then like Yeager took all the parts and threw them behind the berm in front of everybody. It's like fucking bullshit because I don't want this. He's like, "Why'd you throw them away?" It's like, because I don't want this getting in anyone else's gun. And it's like a lit. Yeah, I
yep.
mean, I think Glock pretty much the only thing Glock ever really, uh, the only thing I can ever criticize a Glock for is their grip texture isn't aggressive enough. But you can always add to that. So
Yeah. Grip text for me, it's grip texture and their cheap ass sights they put on them stock.
oh, yeah, there
Uh,
is that. I haven't bought a Glock in so long. I hadn't thought about that. So
I had one, had a guy looking at one. It was a brand new Glock, uh, just the cheap polymer sights on it. He was looking at it, set it on the edge of the desk, didn't quite get it far enough on the desk, and it basically fell off the desk. Fell 3.5 foot, landed on carpet, and you had to vacuum up the rear sight.
well,
Literally, it broke in that many. There wasn't a piece big enough to pick up with your hands. You had to vacuum it
hey, you
up.
know what? Gaston Glock had
Uh,
to save his money to be able to pay for those G7 jets. So he needed to save. He had to cut costs somewhere.
yeah. So now I shoot Glocks very well. I've got a bunch of them. I've got more than I probably should. But the very first thing I do with a Glock anymore is I turn around, I put metal sights in them,
Oh
whether
yeah,
it's suppressor height, night sights, or just regular height. But I switch the front and the rear out, and before I even
yeah.
shoot
All
them.
of our Glocks have aftermarket metal sights in them. But as a matter of
Yeah.
fact, but we've got we what did we do? We sold during the run on the pan. I think I told this on the podcast. During the pandemic run, the local shooter supply, they were selling everything they could get because it's like one of the only businesses that could be open. And I was
Hmm.
talking to the owner, and he's like, if you got anything in the armory that you guys want to let go, now's the time. And I was like, well, and I felt like he was hurting a little bit. So, we scooped up. Like I was always going to kind of like we had a couple. Glock 19s, and I was always going to put mag wells on them so they could fit my hand and not split my hand open. And they were FDE guns, and it was just like, you know what? The Glock 45 has come out, where you can get the full size, 17 frame
Mm-hmm.
and the 19. I was like, we'll just get one of those. So we'll give them those. We I don't know, we took a Walther 45 caliber giant pistol. I don't know why we bought this thing. It was like talk. I mean, this thing was as top. This thing was about as wieldy as a 45 caliber high point. Like it was just
Oh
ridiculous. It was
God.
just like like you fire that thing. It was like having a brick recycling at the top of this gun. It was like my God, this thing is awful. And we even took a because many years ago, because Ohio's a shotgun state, Indiana was a shotgun state too. We had a H&R 20 gauge single shot break open shotgun slug gun for or maybe it's four no, it was 20 gauge uh for deer, so it'd be legal to hunt deer. Well, now that
Mm-hmm.
we can do all kinds of stuff now, and it's like that thing is like it has a scope on it, whatever. It's like this thing, no one's ever going to buy this thing. Well, it's like, well, let's take it on over there to Shooters. We'll help him out. And even somebody even bought that 20 gauge probably as a home defense gun. They were so desperate for a gun. They bought a single shot
Yeah.
20 gauge slug gun with a scope on it. And, like, I need a gun to keep Antifa out, which they did, but it's like, man, like, I don't ever want to be in that position. But yeah, I mean, sometimes you just, you gotta let some of this stuff go. But like, the reason I'm telling that
Yeah.
story, if you are in Cincinnati and you bought a used Glock 19 and it had Larry Vickers sights on it, that was one of our guns. So there's your, like, you have
So
a touch to greatness. You're that far removed from you're right next to greatness.
so was it just the sights, or was it an actual one of the Vickers
This is one of the
specials?
Vickers. We put the Vickers sights on. We bought a bunch of the Vickers sight when he came out with Glock sights. We bought uh,
Yeah.
we bought Glock sights for every Glock in the armory. Like I
Okay.
remember putting sights on Glocks for like 4 days. And everyone still, yeah, every Glock here still has Vickers sights on it. You know,
Yeah.
like like there's so many options. Like at the time, I think it was like the only thing you could get unless you wanted to get the factory sights, and you had to get them from Glock, and it was a big pain in the ass. And so it was like like
Yeah.
these. I mean, hell, like Vickers, it was you give me money, I send you sights, you'll have them in 3 days. It's like here we go, Roger that. And he even like made it easy to measure like the height that like what height front sight you needed. Like where
Yeah.
Glock was just a big pain in the ass. So yeah, yeah. So, but yeah, you're absolutely right. Yeah, the the plastic sights on Glocks are terrible. So, well, we've been going for a while, and it's getting late, and we need the police blotter and toss it. I got two for you. Are you ready? The
Hit
first
it.
one is a feel good story. So have you ever, you see the story of like on an airplane, someone's acting obnoxious, and the flight crew's like, "Hey, look, you're gonna have to get off the airplane," and they're like, "I'm not getting off the plane," and then it escalates, and then it's then the security comes on, and then uniform patrol comes on, and and it's this whatever, and this guy, he's in first class, and he's holding up his phone. He won't get out of his seat, and I don't know what he had done. Well, he eventually got to the point like they're holding up the plane. He's there. They took his luggage off, and they finally have to peel this guy out of his seat. And it occurred to me they're dragging him out, and he's just so obstinate, and he starts crying. And I started realizing the way he was crying, like the way he was yelling. I'm like, oh, is this guy gay? I'm like, Like I'm like I mean like for real. Like I'll put the video up and I'm like, this is like some entitled gay guy or something. Like I can't believe this is happening. And then literally he's crying like, oh my god. Like he's like, oh my god, oh my god. And just like, dude, what the fuck? Like, you know, because I think maybe they wouldn't serve him alcohol. Maybe he was already drunk. For some reason he couldn't get the story was written as, you know, like he
Yeah.
couldn't get a drink, and so he had a meltdown. Is, you know, whatever, because he's in first class. So whatever. In first class, it's real easy to film it because it's right there by the door. So the second police blotter story is amazing because, and I'm only going to do two tonight. So you know the guy that they busted, who they allegedly, because he hasn't been tried and convicted, of killing all those girls in is that Utah? Brian Kohlberger?
No,
Is it? Is that it?
you talking about the three teenagers from this week?
No, no. This happened like a couple months ago. Like the guy killed the girls.
Oh, okay, in
Yeah,
Utah.
he
Yeah,
snuck
you.
into their house and
Yeah,
killed them in their bedrooms, and it was like a party house. And then
yeah,
the whole town was
yep,
freaking out. And then he was a grad student. He's a criminal justice major. Like he was getting his PhD
yeah,
in
yeah,
like in serial killers. And then like they tracked him as he's going across the country, and like he's at home. I'm reliving all of this, and like he's taking out the garbage at his parents' house in Pennsylvania, and he's wearing plastic gloves so he doesn't have to touch the bag, because he's so fucked because he knows they're after him in this DNA, right? And like, so, you know,
yeah.
like, and he's so smart, how are you going to, you know, catch him and all this. Well, apparently there's a thing, and you'll know this because of law enforcement. A lot of times disturbed murderer type people will take trophies, right? They'll take trophies of their
Hmm.
victims. They'll do something. They'll keep something of their victims. Have you ever heard this concept? Yeah, trophy. Yeah,
Oh
they'll
yeah,
do
yeah.
trophies. But so, you know, and it's like, well, this guy is a trained criminologist, PhD candidate, or a master's program, something. He was in grad school, maybe working on his PhD in criminology. His college advisor is this woman that's written this research that's considered some of the best in the country on serial killers. Like this is his area of speciality, okay? So he should know a lot of the tricks of the trade to get a leg up. It even came out after he was identified and arrested that he had volunteered to work with the investigating police department because he's a criminologist. Like he you know, and it's just like, you know, like this is like very interesting. But you know, he also should know better, but now here's proof that he is so fucked up in his own head that he has to do the stupid criminal thing, you know, the psychological thing. They found at least one, if not multiple, IDs of the victims in his car in Pennsylvania. He had the IDs hidden in a glove inside of his glove box. He took at least he
What a
took at
moron.
least one of the IDs of the victims of the person he killed and kept it. And it's like it's not that he's a moron. He's not a moron. He's a graduate criminology major. Taught criminology probably to undergrad students. He's fucked up in his head. he's a he's
Well,
a
yeah,
serial
yeah.
killer, and he just can't, the you know, like the pang of like, I need a trophy, and it's just like, oh yeah, like, you know, like I guess, you know, when I look at him, I kind of worry. It's like, you know, can someone be so smart like they can actually outsmart the system? And you know, it's like, oh no, but you know, even though he knows better, he still kept trophies. It's like, no, if you're actually a serial killer, you're fucked up in the head, and we're gonna catch you. And it's like my feel good story of the police blotter. So there you go. So anyway,
You're gonna
yeah,
slip up
there's
somewhere. I've got one police blotter story if I can
Please
throw you
do.
in
We
real
need a
quick. It's
third.
kind of a feel good
Yeah.
story in a way. It's more of a kudos thing. I want to give a shout out to the Marion County Sheriff's Department in Marion County, Florida. They had that triple homicide this
Oh,
week
yeah.
and got the perps in custody in 3 days. There's one
Oh, like
outstanding.
the perps are like 12
Uh,
years old or something, right?
yeah, yep. Got him in custody. Got a confession out of one already. There's one left outstanding. Not a giant department, more of a, not the huge like Miami-Dade metro type department. So they didn't have all of the resources that maybe some of the bigger departments did. So it was just good old fashioned nose to the grindstone investigative work. And kudos to that department and those deputies for getting those miscreants in
And they
custody.
probably, in 3 days, they probably got it solved before the state bureau, whatever they call them. Like in Ohio, we have one. It's called the BCI, Bureau of Criminal Investigation, that helps assist
Mm-hmm.
small departments and small counties. Like if they have something gets kind of like out of
Yep.
their league. In 3 days, I don't know how it works in Florida, but in Ohio, in 3 days, the BCI, if it was Ohio, the BCI guys are still just pouring their first cup of coffee, just getting briefed on the case. So, yeah, that's pretty impressive.
Yeah. So incredible police work. A lot of hard work went into that, and there's still a lot of hard work to do. And sometimes to me they just need a kudos and a shout out, and I think they earned it this
Amen.
week.
Well, this wraps up episode 297 of the John 1911 podcast. If you want to see any more stories or pictures of links of what we discussed and the incredible police department down in Florida, please go to john1911.com. That's JOHN1911.com. Remember, it's all about shooting guns and having fun, everybody. Have a good night and happy Easter.
Have a good night, everybody.